Obviously, we're going to start with physical abuse, but does anybody else know the other kinds of abuse?
Emotional.
Emotional.
Sexual.
Sexual.
Spiritual.
It's more of a emotional, but you're right. The next one is one a lot of people forget. Neglect is a form of abuse. And we'll talk about that a little later. To start out, physical abuse. Physical abuse is physical injury that results in substantial harm to a child. And this isn't spanking. Spanking isn't abuse. But spanking can lead to abuse. Other types of disciplinary actions can lead to abuse. And then there are things that people do that are abusive that aren't a disciplinary action as well. And then it also is the failure to make reasonable effort to save a child from the physical abuse occurring. So you hear stories about fathers beating their children, or mothers beating their children, or caretakers beating the child. Well, if you're in the household and you're above the age of 18 and you're not protecting the child from it, you too are held accountable for that physical abuse happening to that child. There are several symptoms and signs that you can see in a child that occur that, within combination of each other, could be great evidence to give to law enforcement that they can go and investigate the home life of that child, and you could save that child. So we're going to go through the signs and symptoms. Okay. Frequent injuries that are not adequately explained. So if a child has a bruise right here that looks like a hand, and they're like, oh, I ran into the door, chances are a child isn't going to run into the door at the side of their body, because they're running like this. They're not, I don't even know how you would hit that side of your body to the doorknob. And the doorknob isn't going to make a human hand's print. It's going to be like a circle, like a normal bruise. And it's also, if the bruising of different colors, if it's really yellow and it's spread out and it's faded, but it's still very yellow, that means that they were hit really hard. And so the blood is on the surface of the skin for a long period of time. And so it's important to notice the different colorations of the bruises and patterns of the scars as well. And so again, the burns and bruises in an unusual pattern, like the handprint on the side. And then a lack of reaction to pain. A child who's been beaten over and over again, they're going to have a high pain threshold. And they're going to be able to tolerate pain well. Maybe not well, because it's not a good thing, but they're going to be able to take a lot of abuse and they're going to hold it in because it's what they're used to. It's what they may have been doing their entire lives. Injuries that appear after a child has been unseen for several days. If you're a teacher or a child care worker, you work in a church, and a child comes home after a 4-day weekend or summer vacation, comes to school after that period of time with a whole bunch of bruises over them, chances are something's going on. Now, I'm 23 years old, and I've always had bruises on my legs because I'm a klutz. No, I haven't been abused. That's just me being a klutz. Children are the same way. So that one little evidence isn't enough to hold up to that CPS will come in and investigate. Injuries that involve unusual parts of the body. If a child has bruises all over its back, they're not running into things. There's something that's happening to them, or chances are something's happening to them where they're being hurt by somebody that they love and trust and they don't know how to get out. Frequent complaints of soreness when they move or movement, and that's uncomfortable. And then aggressiveness, destructive behavior. Children can be hostile, they can be aggressive, they can be rambunctious, but there comes a point where it's different. You notice that the child is acting differently than they normally do. You need to keep that in mind as you're observing what's going on with this child. If you're going home and seeing their parents, it's important to notice that, because what child doesn't want to see their parent at the end of a long 8-hour school day? Yes, they may be grounded, so they don't want to go home. That's a given. But there's a degree of difference between being grounded and being afraid. If they're actually afraid to go home, you need to take note of that for further investigation. And then passive withdrawal and emotionless behavior. These two can kind of contradict each other, but it's important to understand the difference between them. The first one, the aggressiveness, that's when it comes to being so frustrated that something's going on with them and they don't know how to say it. So they're going to be aggressive and they're not going to know the words to tell you what's going on. So you have a child in your classroom who's aggressive more than they're used to. Keep in mind that there could be something going on and be patient with them and try to understand what they're going through. Even ask them, hey, is everything okay, Jimmy? He's going to tell you if you try to see it from his side point of view. And then the passive withdrawn and emotionless behavior. Children want to have fun. They want to talk to their friends, but if they all of a sudden become emotionless, like the little girl in the video at school, she was with her friends, but she was scared. She didn't know how to say anything, so she thought the world hated her, so she just sat there emotionless. Those are most of the signs and symptoms of physical abuse. Does anyone have any questions so far? No, I know it's really heavy, but it's important for us to know.